This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for another wonderful podcast with a wonderful guest. Today, we are going to be talking to my guest, Shirley Novack, and the podcast is Your Purpose, Your Power, a Journey to Authenticity. And one of the things about this podcast is that it is in conjunction with Cleveland 13 News. And I like doing work with them because we reach a much larger audience and people who I think will learn from this story. When I read your bio, um, it was very short and concise and to the point, but you've lived a struggling life. And I'd like you to share your journey with us.
Well, for someone who's probably one of the most positive people you'll ever meet, I grew up in one of the most negative households that anyone could ever live in. I had two parents, they were Eastern European. They met in this country and got married. My mother had very serious depression and always told me, never told me what I could do or what I was capable of doing, but always told me what I could not do or don't expect to happen. She was very, very negative. And the more she told me no, the more I told myself yes. And this went on through my whole entire life until I got married. And then I married someone who was equally as depressed and bipolar. And it was tough because I was 21 years old and I didn't want to get married. I was having too much fun. And my parents, I needed to get away from my house. So I did. And I went from the frying pan into the fire because not only was he manic depressive, very, the he woke up the first morning of our honeymoon catatonic because he did not have he wasn't he didn't have the foundation to be a husband or to start a family, and he had a mother who was evil. His mother told me that love was something that had to be earned, and unless I gave her the key to my house and all his brothers the key to my house so they could come and go any way they wanted, I was not earning her love.
Wow.
And here I am, 21 years old, and the first day I'm home, I'm getting this, and I'm calling McLean's Hospital, which is a psychiatric facility. And I never expected that. I mean, I was really thrust into a horrible existence. I had a fabulous job. I worked at BU Medical Center, and I was with the research team that did the first surgeries on the unborn. We researched fetal surgery. Very, very exciting. And sometimes I would have to stay 48 hours, and that was really great because I didn't want to be home. And I'll tell you that I filed for divorce after 25 years.
Say that again. How many years was that?
25. And I got
25.
divorced at 29 years. And I thank Colin Powell. Believe it or not, I thank Colin Powell for giving me the 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 strength to get divorced because I had at this point I had an interior design firm, and I was at the airport picking something up off an airplane. It wasn't on the airplane, and I said, "Okay, I'll be back. I'll go have dinner at the terminal, and I'll come back." I had never been to the cargo area before, so as I was leaving, I fell in step behind an entourage, not realizing that the entourage was Secret Servicemen and state troopers. I was in the wrong place at the right time because I got a great story out of this. Anyhow, they detained me. They detained me. They wouldn't let me leave. They detained my car, and until they looked up and saw that I was a nobody. And then as soon as the plane took off, I took off and I came home that night. They wouldn't speak to me. They surrounded me, but they wouldn't speak to me. I came home that night and said to my husband at the time, have I got a story for you? Wait till you hear this story. And I told him what happened, and he said, that's it. That's it. Either you give up your business and you stay home, or I'm leaving you. And I went, yes, because he was so depressed that I always thought if I told him I'm leaving, he would kill himself. I was really afraid of that. And my kids were mostly grown at this point, although I still had a 15-year-old. And once I said yes, and those words were out of his mouth, I would not go back. And he decided I was having a midlife crisis, and he sent me to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist told me I was the most mentally healthy person he had ever had sitting in his office.
Yeah.
But he got me through this divorce. He got me through this divorce. Anyhow, my the thing that threatened him was I had a very successful interior design business, and I was being written up, and I was featured in the newspaper at some point. And then he was an endodontist. And then I became a member of the Women's Auxiliary, and they were putting me up as president for the Women's Auxiliary, and he couldn't take it. It was too much, too much. And he wasn't strong enough, to fight me on this. So the minute he said, I'm leaving you, I was gone. That was it. I went on and on. It took 4 years to get divorced.
So he was still fighting it, even though he was giving you the divorce.
Oh, well, in Massachusetts, you had no choice. I mean, if I want to file for divorce, I can get divorced. I don't need his approval. However, he fought me every step of the way, and his attorneys would like me. They would say, she doesn't want anything from you. Just give her the divorce. And he'd say, you're fired, and go on to the next one. And it was the same thing. I wasn't, fighting him hard enough I didn't want anything. I just wanted gone. Excuse me. And it took 4 years to
Wow.
get him to sign that paper to go to court. And I literally did not know at the time how much debt he had. He was a white collar gambler. He gambled in the stock market. He margined everything. He lost every dime we ever had. He lost my children's tuition. He lost everything. And yet I said to the judge, the judge said, how are you going to pay for this? And I said, I had nothing to do with it. And she said, in this state, if he had made money, you would have reaped the benefits, but
Sure.
he lost money. So you are 50% responsible for paying that bill.
So how did your kids react all
Oh
these?
my God. They had just made us the most elaborate 25th anniversary party. And my son got up and said, my parents are more in love now than they ever were. And the reason that he said that is because they didn't have an inkling. We didn't fight. We didn't fight. And I wanted them to have a happy upbringing because I didn't. And so I did everything in my power to shield them from all this bad stuff. So they were shocked. And I sat each one of them down separately and tried to make them understand on their level why this was happening
Sure.
so that they could understand. I said, what if someone told you you could go so far and no further? What if, what if? And they kind of understood that, but it had a big effect on my 15-year-old.
Sure. Absolutely. So because of the upbringing you had, when you realized that, and I'm sure you realized it before you were married 25 years, that the marriage was not good, did you think about leaving early on?
I asked him for a divorce after 5 years. And he said, no, I'm not giving you a divorce. Yeah, I will be the best husband you ever had. And you want to know something? After that, he was the best husband anyone could ever have. He wined me and dined me and treated me like a jewel. And then I found out I was pregnant. So there went that. And then when my son was born, he fled the hospital because his mother told him, don't ever have a son. Now, she had three sons. She said, boys will not love you the way a daughter will. And so he treated from the day he was born, my middle child, he treated him terribly to the day he died. He treated him terribly. They
How
never
sad.
had a good relationship. So I had a daughter first, so that was great. Then I had two boys. So by the time I had my third son, he was over it, you know. Um, and then my son became a TV personality, and he was that made him very happy. He was very proud of that. But you know what? I ended up after I got divorced, I was separated for I was single for 7 years, and everybody was fixing me up, and I was having the most wonderful time. I really was. I worked three jobs to sustain myself, and somebody fixed me up with Mr. Wonderful, who was a widow. He just wanted to get married again, and we just celebrated our 23rd anniversary.
How wonderful.
So I'm really old. I mean, I've had all this years. But one thing it also allowed me to do is during the pandemic, I sat down and wrote a book. And it was a historical fiction based loosely on my dad's life. And it became very well known. It became a great book. And I just came out 2 months ago, my second book, which is on human trafficking. Don't ask me why, I don't know, but I got into that. So the thing that I need people to understand is that the three dirtiest words in the English language are would have, could have, and should have, because you can't go back and undo something you've done. You can just learn from it and go forward. And I believe that if you make a mistake, go on. The failure is not in making a mistake. The failure is in not trying. And I believe that, and I speak about it. And I think it's really important. There is no such thing as I can't.
You're absolutely correct there. And there is no age limit in finding your happiness and doing the things you want.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really old. And I published my first book came out 3 years ago. The second book came out 2 months ago, and the third book is on its way, which is a sequel to the second book.
Now, are you an only child?
No, I have had two older brothers. Now I still just have one older brother.
Did,
And
did
all of us are very, my brothers are so successful and they've lived wonderful lives and we talk about that and they say, because we saw what we did not want to become.
interesting. And it's interesting that the three of you took on a positive outlook on life,
Yep.
whereas in theory, the way you talk about your childhood, how could you see the positivity out there? Did you have other family members or friends or neighbors who showed you that there was more to what you were
No,
experiencing?
I honestly believe I was never a child. I believe that I would lay in bed at night and look out the window at the stars and wonder what was out there. I really never enjoyed childhood. Um, I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. And I guess we were so independent. When I was 5 years old, I lost my mother in a department store downtown. And I went out into the street and I saw this old lady and I remember her distinctly. And I said to her, um, I lost my mother, but if I had 10 cents, I could get on the bus and make my way home. And she gave me 10 cents.
Oh my gosh.
And my mother called a neighbor like an hour later and said, Shirley's missing. I'm at the police station, yada, yada, yada. And she said, no, she's out in the street playing. It put my mother in a hospital. She had a total nervous breakdown, and that was her answer to everything difficult in life, have a nervous breakdown. She lived to 105.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Did you ever resolve your relationship with her at all?
I never liked her. And I liked her even less because it was because of her that I made a bad marriage. Marrying a doctor? Are you kidding? That's like, oh, what will my sisters-in-law say? They'll be so jealous. My daughter's marrying a doctor. I could care less, but I wanted to run away. My father told me I couldn't go to college because education is wasted on females. You're going to get married, you're going to be a mother, and that's what you're good for. So I worked after school every day, and I was able to afford an associate's degree. And
So
so I had an associate's degree in laboratory science. I became a medical assistant, but the research team I worked for was looking for someone with a master's degree. And again, my parents said, why are you even applying? It's a waste of time. They're never going to hire you. Well, not only did they hire me, probably because I came cheap, but they said my enthusiasm was overwhelming. I read everything I could about them. They sent me to the University of Rochester Medical School to take a crash course on hematology. So, it it was great. It was great. And so the more I found that the more they said no, the better I did, the more I fought it.
were your parents first generation Americans or did they
I'm first
migrated here?
generation
Your first generation. Because as I'm looking at your bio, your parents being from Poland and
in
Russia,
Russia. Hmm.
that would have been their way that their way of thinking. That first of all,
Yep,
girls are secondary,
yep.
boys, opposite of what your mother-in-law had said. Um, I grew up in a very loving family, but I also heard for many years that my brother's education, both of them, it was more important than mine.
Hmm.
And when I was had to go to college, I sat my parents down and I said, why is my education not as important as theirs? And they both apologized to me at that point.
Did they really?
And they both said that's how they were brought up. My mother gave up going to college so that her brother could go to dental school. And so she was sort of carrying that belief on. And it finally was, you know what, we're sorry. You have just as much a right as they do. But I can understand my my grandparents had no concept of why I would want to go to college. It was, don't you just want to get married and have a family? And yes, I did, but I wanted a career as well. So kudos to you for seeing that there was so much more out there than,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would have loved to have been an English teacher. I loved the word, I loved the language. But in Boston at the time, you had to up your mind in the ninth grade, am I going to college or not? Because if you were going to college, you could not take shorthand or typing.
okay.
And if you weren't going to college, you couldn't take accelerated courses. Or actually, I was in an accelerated English class. I told you I love the word. Um, but other than that, I I I couldn't. I couldn't take college courses. It wasn't allowed. So something's licking my leg right now. Stevie Nicks. It's Stevie Nicks, my little Havanese. Um, you know, I I took science courses because that I was allowed to do. And I did not want to go to secretarial school. I didn't want to be a secretary. And one day in the high school, I went to see the guidance counselor and I knocked over a table
Yeah.
because I'm a klutz. And I picked up a pamphlet from a school in Boston. It was a 2-year college at the time. Uh, it was Fisher College, and they offered a course for medical assistants, and you only had to have so many years of science, which I did, and I got in, and I was so excited, and that's how I ended up in science.
Sure.
I actually, and I ended up being a teacher.
So what took you from science to interior decorating? Because they're opposite ends of the
You
spectrum.
think, well, actually, you'd have no idea how many nurses became interior designers.
Really.
I went to when my youngest was 3 years old and he started nursery school. I had hired 2 interior designers to help me with my house. They in turn hired me to work for them. And I said, well, I can work for you part-time, but if my son gets sick, I have to stay home. And this is. So they hired me anyway, and I worked in their showroom. And one day, a client came in brandishing a gun because they were using his money to pay someone else's bills. And I said, no, I'm quitting. I can't do this. And all of a sudden, I had a clientele that followed me. And that at that point, my ex-husband said, why don't you go and open your own practice? Because evidently you have a following. And I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the right way. So I went back to school. I took one course a semester for 9 years, and I got my degree in design.
Wow.
And I didn't I didn't go to my graduation because I was already established. I was doing
Sure.
show houses, but I didn't want anyone to know that I was just graduating as, with all the credits and everything. And so because I didn't go to my graduation, my husband at the time, I got nothing, not a card, not a gift, not anything. And the reason was, well, you didn't go to your graduation, you don't deserve a gift. It was
Okay.
also the same day as my daughter's college graduation. So where was I going?
Exactly. Exactly.
And then when I became too successful, he couldn't take it. And so that ended that marriage. And I've done more. I mean, we built a house on Cape Cod in a resort area, and the idea was to rent it for the summer. But it was beautiful. It was just too nice. And in this resort, they had a marketplace, and the marketplace had 24 little boutiques, but they had no candy store. Now I don't eat candy. I don't like candy. And I went to the owner of the marketplace and I said, you don't have a candy store. He said, well, no one's ever opened one up. I said, I'll do it. That way my kids would always have a summer job and I could stay there for the summer. I didn't have to rent it out.
Ah, okay.
I could be away from my husband. It was wonderful. And to this day, my kids' friends call me Candy Lady. It's the Candy Lady. And we had a celebrity clientele. I happen to have Cyndi Lauper's own private first copy of True Colors. She
So
used to, yeah.
what I love about your story is that you just have kept going. And I know you call yourself old. I mean, I'm 75 years old and
I'm older than you,
but not by much.
4 years.
Okay.
I'm going to be 79 in November,
Okay.
but mentally I'm 12. So that's why. My next profession is going to be as a pole dancer.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And one of the reasons I started podcasting 14 years ago is because I was coming out of a corporate job that I was being pushed out of. I was being told, you're too old to be here. You're not doing what you need to do yet.
By the way, you don't look anywhere near your age. Your skin is
Well,
beautiful.
thank you.
Okay.
But I was working with students, and my students, 17, 18 years old, they would come to me and just want to talk
Yeah.
because they felt comfortable. And I kept saying to the college, I'm doing my job. These students are staying in school because of me. And no, no, you're going to have to go out
No.
the door. And so I ended up getting pushed out the door. But it was being pushed out the door that I realized you're not going to stop me. I'm going to find what makes me feel good. And
Hmm.
luckily, I have a wonderful husband who he looked at me and he said, okay, if you can't work there anymore, you can't work there anymore. He said, just find something that's going to keep you happy. And, I was the major breadwinner at that point too. And it was like, we'll figure it out. And that's what I want our listeners to know. We can blame our childhood on our circumstances today. But if you don't do anything with those circumstances,
Yeah.
then it's your own fault. And it may not be easy. And I'm sure living with somebody who you weren't in love with for 25 years and then having to wait another four to be totally out of it had to have taken a toll on you.
Well, when we got separated, people who did not know me very well, my dearest friends knew what I was about. But to the world, we looked like a strange couple, but a happy couple. Like they'd say, you're so different. Like when we got separated, I had people coming up to me saying, I always thought that even though you were very different people, you were always so happy because to the world, I was very happy. During the days with my nights were the price I paid for the days I had because he took responsibility for nothing. I mean, I even did some of my own plumbing, electric. I mowed the lawn. I did it all. And he didn't even know where anything was in the house because he came home and took a nap. He got up, he went to work, came home at lunchtime and took a nap. I mean, he did nothing. So I brought up the kids, thank God. Um, and it was very freeing for me that he did nothing because he didn't care what I did. He didn't, I mean, I was always faithful. I never was unfaithful, and I could live with that. But I joined a tennis team and I did things that made me happy. And I had a million friends and I had a good life, except for when he came through the door.
So, what made you decide to sit down and write the first book?
I always had a book in me. I've always been able to write. In fact, my fourth grade teacher gave us an assignment to write a poem about spring. I was 9 years old. He was so impressed by my poem that he made me read it to the entire school. And then he came up to me afterwards and said, do not ever stop writing because it's in you. And someday you're going to be a great writer. I never forgot that. I never forgot it. We were his first class out of college. So when I wrote my first book, he is the only person that I dedicated it to that I acknowledged. And I also printed the little poem I had written. And I was trying to find his family because he would be in his 90s probably, but he could still be alive. I don't know. And I just wanted his family to know the effect that he had on a 9-year old child. And I do, I attribute it to him. And like my mostly 5 stars on both books. It's just amazing. I mean, don't ever think you're going to get rich writing a book because you're not, unless you're Stephen King, you
Right.
know.
And
But
but I think writing your book probably has it makes you feel that your story is real. I know I blog almost daily, and my blogs are based on what I'm going through at that moment in time, reflecting from the past.
mhm.
And, I've been told numerous times, oh, Karen, you should write a book. And my comment is, someday, if my boys think my writing is worthwhile to be shared besides the blogs, they can put it together and publish it. But it's out there for anybody who wants to read them. And I once was told too that I could not write. So you were told you could write. I was told my writing was pretty darn bad.
Who
And
told you that?
I had a teacher who told me that. And his father, my two brothers were excellent writers. And when I came home and told it to my dad, he said, "Honey, don't worry about it. We'll do the writing for the family." And so, in the back of my mind, as a young kid, okay, I don't have to worry about my writing. But every time I would try to write something and I would take it to my dad, very nicely, he would edit it. And there were so many red marks on it that I just felt I was worthless. However, when my father passed away, I wrote his eulogy. And when I read the eulogy, my family looked at me and said, "When did you learn to write?"
You're
And I
kidding.
realized
Wow.
I learned to write the day that my father died,
Uh-huh.
and I can write. And so don't believe what somebody else tells you. You got to find it within yourself. And I'm
That's right.
grateful that you're still doing this.
Yeah. Never say never. Um, yeah, I mean, my father, my father's mother died when he was 12 years old. And his father, who was a horrible, mean tyrant, sent he and his 9-year-old brother to live in the care of a brothel and said, "I'm going to move to America. When I have enough money, I'll send for you." 3 years later, he sent for them. After my father was raped by a Polish soldier in the brothel when he was 15. I did not know that till after my father died. The story came out. But he always had a sadness about him. He wasn't jovial, but he was very humble and he was very dignified. Um, he never made waves. Don't make waves. It's, you know, um, so I always had that story that I wanted to write. During the pandemic, I sat down without an outline, without anything in my head, and I wrote the book. I just wrote. I just wrote every day, and when it was done, I knew I couldn't get a publisher because I had never written before. So I found a hybrid publisher. I sent one manuscript out. They said, "We'll call you in a few weeks and let you know." They called me in 3 days and said, "We'd like to sign you." And the book has gotten mostly 5-star reviews, a few
Yeah.
4 stars, but like nothing terrible. My new book, so far, because it just came out, it's gotten all 5 stars, except it's gotten 2 4 stars. One is because the person who read it was so terrorized.
Oh,
She said, "I couldn't sleep that night." And the other one was she she didn't like some of the editing. She felt that the editing could have been better, which I edited it, so it's a slap to me, yeah. But so I went with a hybrid publisher the first time. I was contacted by a traditional publisher for the second book. And of course, I signed with him right away. I mean, a traditional publishing company. After 8 months, nothing had no communication, nothing. So I called him on it, and he didn't like that. And he dropped me because he was a misogynist. I
okay.
found out later. Some of the people, one woman in particular that tracked me down, I don't know how, but she found me. She said, "I just want you to know you dodged a bullet." Because within 10 days, I had an independent publishing company take my book, and it was out in 12 weeks.
Wow. You are remarkable,
Well,
yet you've
I,
just lived your life.
I lived my life, and like I said, Every morning that I wake up and can take a breath, I know I'm alive, and I got to do something. I've got to do something. So I found I love writing. My second book, which is on human trafficking, like I said, I would come downstairs and give my husband chapters to read. My good husband,
Yeah.
and he would say, "What goes on in your head? I mean, where is this coming from?" You know, um, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I love true crime stories like 2020 Dateline. I love Dateline. Investigative Discovery. I watch all of them. 48 Hours. I just, well, the Boston Strangler killed someone around the corner from me years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That was intriguing. It was, I don't know. Yeah. But
Well,
I think if somebody has a passion for something, it doesn't matter what it is, just go for it.
it's funny that you should talk about the Boston Strangler. My mother um, and father grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And
Mhm.
right before my parents got married, my mother worked at a local delicatessen. And that delicatessen, um, the mob would show up. And my mom, one day, she said she was standing at the register and she sees this guy come in and she recognizes him from the newspaper. And she really realizes it's Elliot Ness. And she said she doesn't know if she should acknowledge him, hide under the, counter or what. And he walked in and he looked at her and he loved her long brown hair. And he
Oh
came,
no.
he said, "You are beautiful. Don't ever change your hair." And with that, he and his cronies went and sat in the back of the restaurant. And my mother said they would come in there regularly. And I said, "Weren't you afraid?" And her same words were like yours. No, I was intrigued. To me,
Mhm.
I would have been terrified. But,
Oh, I love it.
yeah. So,
No, I love that. I love yeah. My feeling is that if look at I was I like 5 years ago, I was detained by the bomb squad at the airport because they thought I had a bomb in my suitcase where it was actually medicine on ice and the ice had crimped.
oh,
And they detained me. They took me to a part. Do I look? I mean, am I a terrorist, really? So this is the second time
yeah.
now I've been detained by the government for something. But I said, what a story. I got another story.
Yes, you do.
I have another
Absolutely.
story. I have but I don't get upset. Like people say, man, are you crazy? I would have freaked out. I would have what? And I said, no, because it gave me a great story. I had even called the airport ahead of time and said, I am traveling with medication that's going to be on ice. Don't worry about
So, how can my listeners find you and especially find your books?
it. The book is called Stolen Lives. Um, booklocker.com is my publisher, and it's Booklocker, I think 4697. You can order it through them, Amazon, and any place that sells books.
Okay. Well, we will have that all in the show notes. So, there's no excuse for people not to get out and get your book. And I want to
It's an
thank
easy read. It's a tough read, but it flows. That's what I've been told. It just flows. And the first book is doing even better now that I have a second book out.
that's usually the way it works.
I don't know, but all of a sudden it's like going up there on Amazon and yeah. But the bottom line is I'm happy doing it. Whatever brings you happiness, that's it. If it
That
if
is
it doesn't,
important.
like the one thing I forgot to mention is I always wanted to be a teacher. And when federal funding got cut back when I was in research, they laid everybody off but me because I knew everybody's job. I could do it. And then it just became if there was an experiment going on, I could be there for 48 hours straight. Otherwise, I had nothing to do. I would leave in the middle of the day and go to a movie. It was crazy. So they opened up a school in Boston, a paramedical training school that taught medical assisting called the Bryman School. And I applied for a job and I worked there and I taught, and my students were between the ages of 18 and 50. I had a blast. I had the best time. And even after I had my children, it's my fax machine. I'm told that I'm old fashioned because no one has fax machines anymore. Okay. But when I had to stop working because I had my first child, they offered me a night course. They said, if we create an evening program, will you teach it? And I said, absolutely. And I did that until I had my third kid. And I said, "Kid, I'm tired."
Well, I want to thank you for a delightful afternoon. It's been terrific, and wish you a lot of luck with your three books and the fourth one when I
No,
know
the third,
it's
it's
right.
the third one is underway.
Okay.
Uh,
All right.
I
You,
haven't thought about the fourth one yet.
there
I
will
don't
be one. I know that. You take care now. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.